Can you guys hear me okay if this is okay, right? All right. So I'm really happy to see everyone here. This is as Kara mentioned, our second series. You guys seeing that on artificial intelligence. And like she's mentioned, I'm Brandon Z. Hoff. And a little bit about me, I'll jump into it. It's good because I don't have a traditional computer science background. I actually come from the business side of things and community impact. And I really sit in between where technology and social entrepreneurship sit at. I actually founded a cooperative a couple years ago. We did a case study to see the viability of equitable supply chains and community business models. But I've been delving into artificial intelligence for maybe the last 3 years or so. I've been following machine learning for maybe the last 10 years. You guys will learn what machine learning is to this presentation. Um, but really, like I think that artificial intelligence is going to impact the way that we live, learn, and work. And so I founded an organization. It's called RUDI, Responsible Use of Digital Intelligence. And really, for the last 3 years, it's been a research project on how to drive AI adoption and how to find the ethics and responsible use of artificial intelligence. And so, hence the name RUDI. If you're familiar with the Jetsons, RUDI was who George Jetson worked with. It was a referential universal digital indexer, and it was his robot that he pushed once or twice per day. And so RUDI. And so a few things that we're going to get into, just to level set. If you didn't make the first one, it's okay because these series are built to be able to work independently from each other. And so a couple of things that I just want to ground us in, that artificial intelligence is a tool that has been created. And our goal tonight is to demystify it and do a little bit of exposure therapy. And so I'm going to demonstrate a bunch of different tools. You'll be able to learn about them. You'll ask questions. No question is a bad question. I want it to be interactive. So if there's anything just pining through your brain, let me know. But first and foremost, artificial intelligence, we should be thinking about this in terms of augmenting humans instead of automating humans, instead of replacing humans. And so you should look at this tool as a bi-directional conversational tool that you use to speak with. If you're already using a tool like Siri or Alexa, this is an artificial intelligence tool. It's just not as powerful as something like ChatGPT that exists today. And so how many people are using tools now? That's wonderful. That's a good turnout. Every day. How many people are using it every day? There we go. More than one tool? Anybody using ChatGPT plus Claude plus Perplexity plus? There we go. That's a good crowd. All right, so it's going to require you to really shift your thinking of artificial intelligence, looking at AI as a thinking partner, as a collaborative partner. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means and what that looks like as we work through the presentation. In the last series, we talked about what is artificial intelligence, and we went through the entire evolution and history of artificial intelligence. And simply put, it's a field of study in computer science. If you wanted to just talk about like what it is, demystify it completely, a bunch of computer scientists have brought this to the forefront of our society, and now we must deal with it and manage it. But it began in 1956. And so this was Dartmouth College. This was a research summit that happened where the term artificial intelligence was hence coined. And it's a really interesting thing. You can go read about the actual case study and the conference that happened at Dartmouth. That's still available to read. And the definition that they had from Dartmouth was, for the present purpose, the artificial intelligence problem is taken to be that of making a machine behave in ways that would be called intelligent if a human were so behaving. And so, of course, I asked ChatGPT, what does that mean in 15 words or less? And so AI is about making machines behave in ways we could consider intelligent if done by humans. And so after this entire summit, they had a couple grounding principles when they were developing the technology. And so you have to think about 1956, what was going on in the US in 1956. We're probably in the midst of geopolitical hotbeds. There's a Cold War, there's a space race. There's even a different understanding of what intelligence was at the time. And so when they were grounding their research in this, one of the things that popped out, I can't remember the researcher's name, but one of it that was central was language, and how language is instrumental to human cognition. And if we wanted to develop machines, how would we develop a smart machine as it relates to human cognitive processes? And so this is how they really grounded some of their research. But the real question that we should be thinking about when we talk about artificial intelligence is what is human intelligence? And what does it mean to replicate human intelligence with a machine? And so, of course, it depends on who you ask. Back in the early philosophical views of intelligence, you can go all the way back to Aristotle or even prehistory, that intelligence was really seen as like a divine gift for human beings. It was a thing that shaped our consciousness, it was part of our soul, it's a part of our creations. And then as we started to develop societies, as society started to grow, we began to expand in our definition of intelligence. And so I mentioned the 1950s and their understanding of intelligence because much of that was grounded even in some forms of eugenics or scientific racism. And so also we evolved from that and we look at a cognitive science revolution that has now given us more expansive definitions of what intelligence is now. And so we look at it now as a conversion system. Information converting to knowledge, knowledge being able to turn into an action. And so that's a very simple definition of intelligence for machines, at least. I think it's more expansive for humans, but that's for another discussion. And because intelligence does embody social, emotional, business, war, human, artificial, it's a very complex thing. And so I very much so disagree with the thought of machines ever becoming conscious or sentient, but also that's for another discussion as well. And so in our last discussion, we walked through from oral traditions all the way through AI. And I'll make sure that we'll send that out for those who didn't get the first presentation, but we walked through the entire evolution of intelligence and so forth. And so now, I believe that the way we define intelligence will inspire how we create it. And so I think it's very important how we're looking at what intelligence is and what it means in our society. And so that brings us to our discussion for today. And when most people are talking about artificial intelligence, they're talking about generative AI. And this is a form of artificial intelligence that can generate and create information. And so our AI has mostly operated behind the scenes. We're all familiar with news feeds on our phones, Netflix recommendations, or GPS. This is all powered by artificial intelligence. However, this new form of AI, which can generate content, is something that is now consumer facing. It's something that now we can interact with. And this is called a large language model. And we'll get into what are large language models, but these are really the two terms that are imperative for this evening. So when you walk away, you say, when people say AI, they're talking about generative AI and large language models in this context. And so how does it work? And I promise this is as technical as it's going to get. A large language model, you need three components. You need lots and lots and lots and lots of data. Lots of data. The founding infrastructure for a large language model or generative AI is data. You need an architecture that can manage the data. And then you need different parameters that you can pull to be able to then influence the data as it comes out. And so if you can think about this library, all the books or information in this library, computer scientists have figured out how to convert that to numbers and then to be able to engage with it. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. There's a process called tokenization, and that's taking smaller words or text and being able to break those down into smaller windows of words. And so what does that look like? I am understanding this concept. So when you write to ChatGPT, the words come in, I am understanding this concept. The model breaks that down into I am understanding this concept. It breaks it further down into I am understanding this concept. And then it breaks it down into numbers so that the machine can then understand what it looks like. And so what does that look like in practice? This is the OpenAI tokenizer. So I just want to show you when you're engaging with a tool like ChatGPT, what is actually happening. And I think this process of just seeing what's happening will help you just understand when people say prompt engineering or when they say you can help your inputs, this is what happens. And so I put in this message that I just copied, and you can see here the tokenization process. It takes these words, learn, about, language, model, tokenization, and it breaks it down for simpler understanding. And you can go to the token ID and you can see the numbers there. And so if you think about the machine, it's just processing numbers that have all been converted to words. So every book in here has been converted to numbers. And so that's how ChatGPT gets its information. All right. This right here is a picture of a coffee shop that's blurred. But It's about attention. It's attention mechanism. And I promise we won't get too technical, but the architecture in ChatGPT is called an attention mechanism. There's a great research project that's out there that came out in 2017 called Attention is All You Need. And it describes this attention mechanism. But basically, it's what helps ChatGPT understand when you're taking money out of the bank, you're talking about a financial institution and not a riverbank. And so it's able to focus its attention in all of the text that you get. So all those numbers that are being filtered through, millions and billions of numbers, it's able to siphon through all of those numbers and understand the queries or inputs that you're asking for. And so the three fundamental building blocks of a large language model, generative AI, data, architecture, and parameters. And that's all for the technical spiel, right? Now we're into the good stuff. And so what do these things do? And so with AI models now, generative AI models, there's really three focus points that make them incredible. They can generate text, they can generate pictures, and they can generate sound. And so we reviewed some of the surveys from the last session. And one of the biggest thoughts was, how do I know when I'm engaging with an AI model? And how do I know, or how do I help myself or prepare myself to not be defrauded by an AI model or scammed by AI? Or how do I know when I'm engaging with an AI system? And so the best way to be able to do that is to engage with AI models, right? To be able to see them, to be able to understand them, to be able to really have an intuition for what they look like. And so we're going to walk through that. And I call this a bit of exposure therapy with artificial intelligence. And so we're going to start with text generators. So these are the leading text generators that are out there. Of course, ChatGPT, I know many of you have probably heard of ChatGPT. Copilot, if you're working for a Microsoft organization, you've heard of Copilot. Perplexity is a direct competitor with Google. They use AI to be able to search the internet. Claude is probably the most responsible of all the text generators. They use something called constitutional AI, which is really a guardrails or safekeeping for how the information extracts all of its text from the books that are in the library. And then, of course, Gemini.
You said responsible is in like protecting information.
Yeah, so responsible in that what you can query and prompt it to do, right? So you can only ask particular questions for Claude, and they have a system called constitutional AI that governs that. Which someone like there's a tool called Grok, if you guys have heard of this, the one XAI that Twitter makes, which doesn't have very many guardrails. And so there's nuances between all of the different text generators. So I'll briefly show you just what this looks like. Not now. And so let's say if we ask ChatGPT, hey, can you tell me the difference that exists between ChatGPT, Copilot, Perplexity, Claude, and Gemini? So I'm using my computer to talk to it. This is also an AI model that's on my computer, one that I actually developed. I'm pretty proud of it. And so we asked ChatGPT, and you can get a good idea of ChatGPT answers. And so I will say that my ChatGPT is pretty custom to me. I use it pretty regularly. And your ChatGPT, if you're using it, you can customize it to have a completely interactive experience of your own liking. And so that's ChatGPT. And then there's also Claude AI. And just so you get an idea of how Claude responds. And so Claude's a little more serious. There's no emojis, there's no fun stuff, a little more structured in it. And it says, hey, Claude, that's me. And so the fact that it can recognize the words in itself, that's pretty impressive, I think. And it talks about how ChatGPT, Copilot, Perplexity, and then Gemini. And then for those who may not be familiar with Perplexity, we'll put it also in Perplexity, just so you can get an idea of how each of these different models perform. And so Perplexity is going to actually search the internet and cite its sources, which is different from many of the other ones that don't cite their sources. And so bear in mind that all this information still comes from all the information that exists on the internet or in textbooks. But this one cites it. It's going through 96 sources for some reason. All right. And so then it gives its answer and it says, hey, ChatGPT is this. And here you can see where it cites its information from. cites its information from there. It has 96 total sources that you can see there that it used. Talks about Microsoft Copilot, talks about Perplexity, and it didn't identify itself this time, but it talks about it. And then also, last but not least, you'll see Copilot. And I just wanted you to just see the just nuances between all of the tools, that they operate similarly but different, right? They kind of all have their own personality and their own makeup in terms of how they respond. And so, of course, you're going to influence its responses through prompting, which we'll talk about. But these are the major leaders in text generators. There's several others, but ChatGPT probably has maybe 60% of the market share. So they're the dominant text generator. So most people are using ChatGPT. Actually, most people are not using, if they're using any model, they're using ChatGPT, but actually a lot of people are not using AI tools. And so the AI detection tools, how many people have used an AI detection tool at all? All right, so there are AI detection tools that exist and they're not great. And there's a few reasons why they're not great. And one of the reasons is because an AI detection tool is checking for two things. And you can do this as well when you're trying to understand if someone's using an AI tool. The perplexity, not related with the tool we were just talking. This is actually just the confusingness, or how I would say how complicated or how complex is the text that's being generated. And then the burstiness, how varied the sentence structure is in length. And so when you're using an AI detector that's out there, when you just want to put all the text in there and say, is this AI generated? I need a mic. All right. If this is this AI generated, this is what the AI detectors are checking for. They're checking to see how complex the writing is and what's the burstiness. And if you've ever heard of like the Flesh grading score of any sort that says this is a fifth grade level or 10th grade or 12th grade level, the AI detectors are doing the same way. And because that these are models that they want to have as universally acceptable, then typically your perplexity is quite low or somewhere in the middle. And so a response from an AI model right out of the box is going to be very cookie cutter. Many people say that it doesn't have a soul when it's speaking. It just sounds really bland. And so this is part of that. And so burstiness is how varied the sentence structure is in length. And so if you're evaluating an AI output, which it makes it difficult to detect an AI output, because what happens if half of the AI, half of the output is from my writing and the other half is from the AI? Then how do you determine, what part of the writing is by a human and what part is by an AI? And so it makes these AI detectors um, very difficult to really get this right. You can put in an entirely human written story and it may detect it as AI, so they're not infallible. And so here's an example of what high perplexity, high burstiness looks like. And so this is also a form of prompt engineering as well. When you influence the model's output in any kind of way, this is how you're constructing prompts. And so a prompt is just what you tell the AI model in order to be able to get a response from it. And so this is me playing around to say, well, give me a story, high perplexity, and high burstiness. And you can see what the output is. Lightning whispered secrets in code. Beneath the soil, roots post Morris. Oak trees trading stock tips. Meanwhile, a cat named Fibonacci danced on broken clocks, purring probabilities. It means absolutely nothing, but it's quite poetic. Sky cracked sideways, time hiccuped. Geraldine sipped rain, levitated. Not again, she muttered, turning into static. The moon took note, silently amused. I mean, it's I guess whatever your forte is. And so low perplexity and low burstiness. And of course, you can see the very, very short sentences. The clock ticked, Sarah waited, rain tapped in the window, a knock came. But you can see how you can influence the outputs of the machine by what you tell it to do. And so I said, write me a prompt or write me a short story with low perplexity and low burstiness. And so this is high perplexity, low burstiness. And as you can see, it influences in the same kind of way. And then, of course, there's low perplexity and high burstiness. And so this is a form of prompt engineering where you manipulate the machine's output. And so you can see this can make it very difficult to detect something like this if a person is influencing how the AI is operating. I would say that anybody that takes the AI response directly out of the machine is probably quite lazy. We talked about this in the last presentation, that taking that kind of shortcut, many people look at that as a form of cheating, which could be debatable. But nonetheless, a output directly out of an AI model will typically have a very cookie cutter response, right? And so This is a children's story generated by an AI model. This is totally straight out of the box, right? I didn't make any edits. I just said generate a children's story for bedtime. And as you can see, I mean, I don't know if you guys can tell if this is AI generated. It looks like a pretty standard kid story to me. I don't know. Does it pop out anybody, a children's professor, and say that, man, this is pretty bad. I could do better than that. But nonetheless, I thought that that was a pretty good children's story. And I was on Reddit and it talked about how do you feel about text messages written by AI? Because now that AI is a part of our world, I know that people are using AI to brush up their emails or to even write messages to their significant others. And so this person was pretty upset about someone using an AI model to be able to talk back to them. And so I took it upon myself to say, hey, you know what? Well, how about we write our own apology letter using AI? I asked, write me an apology letter for my girlfriend with high perplexity and high burstiness, 50 words or less. My love, I fumbled the cosmos of us, fractured stardust where constellations once danced. Regret ricochets in my ribcage. Silence my penance. Forgive this chaos cloaked heart, still tethered to your light. If time could rewind, I'd unbreak every breath. I'm sorry, utterly, endlessly, and perfectly yours. I mean, you might have to snap it up, like, and so, and so, one of the things that you want to really pay close attention to just bring it all around for text generators is you want to be mindful of getting phishing emails or phishing scams. And that's just when someone sends you an email and they're phishing for information and you click on this and then, they hack into your computer. And so this is one of the things you want to be very careful for when someone's sending an AI generated message, even if from maybe even a non-English speaking country who's using an AI tool to be able to do that, or someone using an AI tool who speaks English. And so part of this is, as you just saw, that you can influence the AI's output. And so you're probably going to pay more attention to who you're getting the email from. And then also just one thing that you can always check is when you see the person sending the email, the last part of their email is the website. And so gmail.com, you will go there, it will take you to Google. So it's good always to check. You get an email or you get a response that's by someone to be able to check who you're getting it from. This was something I got from Facebook. I wasn't sure if it was real or not. I had my Facebook account hacked before, and so I wasn't sure. And so I actually went to the facebookmail.com to be really verify to see if this was a real site. And so I will say that as something to do, that if you're just getting emails or you're getting messages, it's very important to just check to see who's sending that message because oftentimes AI text is indiscernible, unless, it's the cookie cutter dry response. And so any questions on AI generated text? Because if not, we're going to get into pictures and videos.
We get a copy of that.
You get a copy of the text. Yes. And the transcript. Yes.
Um, how up to date is the database that AI is?
It varies. And so it varies. And so it varies for each model. And so just to level set, I haven't checked in a while.
Later, that's fine too.
Yes, I haven't checked in a while. So ChatGPT last time I checked was October 2024. Claude, maybe November of 2024. But you can also always check the model and say, how up to date is your info? And the model would then tell you, I can only go back so far in terms of what I am. And so April 2nd, 2025 is how update ChatGPT is.
I thought I read someplace that the answers you see in Google, run of the mill AI response, it's actually a couple of years old.
It could be. And so Google's had a lot of issues with, it's called hallucination, when when it does that. And so when Google first wrote out its AI tool with searching the internet, they had some issues with it. They've since refined it. The models have gotten a lot better now in terms of how they source their information from the internet. It's not perfect. So it's always important to be able to check to see, the source that it's driving its information from. And now ChatGPT, you can actually turn the search feature on if you wanted to be able to search the internet directly and have it source information from you. And so I can say, what were the scores to the NBA games last night? I don't even know if there were NBA games last night, so it should tell me. And so it's searching the internet and then it tells me the scores of the games. And so that's the search feature that's headed in ChatGPT to be able to validate the information that it has. Yes.
The AI detection tools work, right?
Right. No, I would say they're equally as awful, all awful. It's just because it's very difficult because you can alter the text in any kind of way, you know? And so the false positive, false negatives, this kind of happens where you have text that isn't AI generated and then you submit it in there and it says it is AI generated. And so that creates a world of trouble, especially in academia, right? And so pictures, yeah. So hallucination is when the AI model creates, distorts, or gets the information wrong, right? They actually say it and it's not true, or it can be entirely fabricated. Um, the only way you can tell is going to the source, right? Like if you ask it any kind of question, you probably should verify it to be true outside of something like, who was the 10th president? These very qualitative answers are easy for it to get right. But when you have something more abstract, maybe something social, cultural, political, you're going to probably want to verify it or cross-reference it against something else. And so AI is typically a good starting point for information. Pictures and videos. And so these are your image generators that are in the market. Dolly, which is a ChatGPT model, Adobe Firefly, for those of you who are designers, Stability AI, which makes stable diffusion, which is a very, very powerful image generator. Midjourney, Canva also, and Gronk also does some of these. And so the same way with text generators, image generators take pictures. Pictures can be broken down into colors. Colors can be broken down into hex codes. Hex codes are numbers. And so you can turn any image into binary, basically, or something that a computer can understand. And so this was from my Midjourney 3 years ago. Like I've been on Midjourney since it first came out. The picture on the left was 3 years ago. And typically I would have said that an AI picture, you want to look at the hands. It's always the hands, or the eyes, or the smile, or the AI kind of mask over it. And so the models have gotten significantly better. And actually, we'll get to it, March 2025, we'll get to this later in the deck. But this was 3 years ago. You can see on the left how distorted that was. It didn't really understand my request. And you can see on the right how much has changed. It's a drastic improvement in terms of what it can generate. And this was 2 years ago again. Like I just asked, hey, color grade, retro color grade of a redheaded woman wearing shades and a Statue of Liberty in the backdrop. 2 years ago, I redid it, and this is how much it improved. And so it's significant in terms of how well it can be. And so I would have said that, man, you could easily tell an AI picture. It's getting very difficult to tell an AI picture, which is why part of it is using the models and generating with the models to just see what the inconsistencies are, and seeing how they work is going to be very helpful. These are just pictures that I got off the internet. For some reason, Facebook, they just do a lot of renditions of Jesus. And I don't know why, but this was on my feed, and that's a fake picture of Ariana Grande pregnant, which is quite crazy. You got a questions.
It's still hard, like, to recreate these, or are they still as bad as everything, or they got
Sometimes. But we'll see. We'll run one because it used to be the hands always. And so here's an example. Actually saw this on LinkedIn. Can you guys guess which one is the AI generated one? One of these is not real. It's unbelievable. It's kind of quite frightening, actually. But which one would you say? What would be your guess? Are we looking at the same left? I can't tell, but is your guess right? See that, so it's got that AI kind of, and so this is kind of crazy that when you think about the use cases, and so this is new ChatGPT, and so here's the hands, right? Okay. This This is how, a year ago, this is how it would look, right? You could just see like, man, this spooky looking. And just the faces, it's kind of weird looking, right? It's got the AI kind of gloss over it. Um, and then this is ChatGPT. March 25th, they introduced a new image generating model, which is maybe 10 times more powerful than the model that they already had out. And so part of that is now you can generate images pretty seamlessly. And so let me show you how to do this because I actually have a great example of this that where are we at? Which one is ChatGPT? All right, so we're gonna start a new window. And this was gonna be good because my mentor is in the crowd and we talked a little bit about a bird sanctuary. And I had no idea what a bird sanctuary was. I said, how do we do that? And so part of what I want ChatGPT to generate for me is a rendering of a bird sanctuary. What does that look like? Show me an image of a bird sanctuary that's probably in the center of a micro community, maybe 30 buildings. All right. Oh, stop. Because it's going to do it. There we go. I didn't have to tell it to generate an image. And so it's going to generate this image. And I don't know what a bird sanctuary looks like. So it's going to be news for me. And then there's also Midjourney, just so you guys can see some of the image earners. Bird I don't know how to spell sanctuary. This is what happens with these AI tools, man. My spelling is going. Can you generate an image of a bird sanctuary in the middle of a micro community? Maybe 30 buildings. And you can influence the different aspects of it. Let's just make it totally weird. Let's just see what we get. And we're gonna go back to ChatGPT and see what we have here. It's really thinking about this bird sanctuary, man. It must be. All right, here we go. And then Midjourney. Let's see what Midjourney gets us. Yeah.
When did AI get good at making letters? There used to be a way you could spell because it was like the words don't make sense.
So the new ChatGPT, March 25th, when ChatGPT released its new model, which can create words. So words is also something to struggle with. That's a good point out. But the new ChatGPT model can actually do words right on the page. And so here we are. That is your bird sanctuary. I wonder why I did swans like that. I don't know if this is the bird sanctuary but anyway, like this is helping me understand it, right? And so part of that is, can you overlay a poem over the picture? Let's just see where we get, and we'll come back to that. All right. But on the image, please. All right, now it's going crazy. All right, so, but as you can see, it's not perfect, right? I'm glad you just see that. So you got to really play with the models in order to get the outputs you want. And so here's Midjourney. Gave me a picture of a bird sanctuary. And so as you can see, there we go. And so I turned the weirdness all the way up. But yeah, this is my Midjourney. But we'll go because I can get off task. All right. And so that's images. And so images. So what you really want to check with is images. Definitely the hands, definitely the eyes, and the smiles is what you want to do when you're checking an AI generated photo. Immediately, hands, smiles, eyes, and the AI film that goes over it. As you kind of saw in that receipt picture, they're usually over manufactured, right? And so our apology letter, I generated an image for our apology letter. My love, I fumbled the cosmos of us, right? And so this was the image generated based on the picture. That's just the windows, the wind blowing on the windows. Yeah, cosmic stardust. And so this was the image. I said, hey, write me the letter, and this is the image that we got from that, which, pretty telling. And so video generators. Runway, Sora, which is again OpenAI, ChatGPT. So ChatGPT can generate text, can generate images, can generate photos and videos. And then HeyGen is the avatar base, and we'll go on a bunch of those. And so this was 1 year ago. 1 year ago, this is what AI videos looked like. So they 1 year. It's pretty wicked, right?
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
And now this is what they look like now. So I had every intention coming to say, hey, these are the things you can do to tell AI images. This is how you can distinguish. And 2 weeks ago, the new models came out and everything just flipped on its head. And so the best way to understand AI generated content is to create AI generated content. You got to engage, you have to participate, else you just won't have the intuition to know and understand the quirks of the models. And so this is me, and this is my AI avatar that I created, and you'll be able to get an idea. This is where we're at, which is the worst it'll probably be, but this is where we're at in terms of.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the presentation and all this information on generative AI. I hope you're excited about this new frontier of technology. Don't be alarmed. Don't be afraid. We will get through this together.
That's pretty bad, but like this is the HeyGen model, and you see a lot of HeyGen models with employee training.
Is that you?
That's me.
No, I mean, it's not a video, it's an AI generated video.
Yes, with an AI voice.
And how did they get the data for your face?
I just put a still image, and so I was just sitting in my living room, took a picture of myself, and then it put it in motion. I know.
You just trained on a still image. You didn't train. You didn't upload a different video.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so
It was just literally a picture of me and my voice.
and which model?
That was HeyGen.
Okay,
Yeah, HeyGen, this one.
yeah, I haven't used that.
So how much information did you put in to get that video? You could have put in the still,
Is it?
and what did you type in some
You
information?
got a prompt.
I gave it a script.
Yeah, sure.
I gave it the script, and then I gave it my image, and then I gave it my voice.
And who did this?
HeyGen,
Hey,
HEY, HeyGen.
The difference between AI video and deep fakes.
So a deep fake is an AI video that is not real. But the deep part is that it is rendered in a way that looks very real, right? It looks like a real human
How
being.
are they already making them like 10 years ago? This is like new technology.
So you could do this on Photoshop, but the level of effort and talent it would take to do it, right? Like I couldn't go in Photoshop or Adobe. What's the Adobe one that can do animations?
Yeah, you could do like Premiere.
Yeah, Adobe Premiere or After Effects. That's the one. I would have to go in Adobe After Effects, Adobe Photoshop, and Illustrator and make it. Now I can press a button and it generates and renders for me. So that's really the difference.
you said you gave it a script.
Yep.
You have to read the script or to generate the voice.
It generated my voice and read the script itself.
How much voice do you have to give it?
30 seconds. So I uploaded a 30-second clip of my voice, and then it created a video. I know.
30 seconds. Could make a 30-minute video.
No, not yet. And so part of the 30-minute videos, you need a lot of computational power to create a 30-minute video. And the models aren't powerful enough to create that long of a video. So in order to do 30 minutes, I would have to string together 1-minute video clips. But it could be possible with enough patience and grit to be able to get through it.
Yeah, my question is, if AI, you can create text, you can create images, create videos, write code, like what skills should you learn in the 21st century to stay wonderful? Stay,
That's a good question because the one thing about the AI tools is that they can't operate independently. And this is a really philosophical thing, is because I believe human beings, we're experiencing the world. And so outside of just the cool novelty of this or people trying to defraud or scam, like in order to do production level, high quality things with AI, even coding, you have to tell it the architectural structure. You have to tell it the user experience. You have to give it the user journey. If you're in marketing, it doesn't know like how the human being is experiencing the world. And so it can't have this kind of placeholder. And so you're going to need human interaction for sure. And so I would say that learning how to use a large language model to be able to expand the breadth of your knowledge, to be able to go upstream or downstream in what you know is really what it is. So if I'm a marketer, you should be a full stack marketer, right? Like you should be able to write copy or design or code, right? The tools are available to help you do that. Yeah.
I think I heard you correctly in that AI can generate videos up to a minute long.
Yes.
So,
Some models. Yeah, some models can do longer.
so similar how content creators use TikTok or Instagram to create their reels.
Yeah.
For example. Are we at a point that I can upload 10 photos to ChatGPT and say, this is the aesthetic, the theme, the tone, the story I want to tell, the script, generated video, one minute video?
Yes. And
TikTok is AI that does AI videos, and somebody points out like she's not real.
yes.
Somebody says she's been a doctor for, and I hope she's off. She's AI.
Yeah, this is true. Yes. To answer, the short answer is it's not easy to do. Like you have to have you have to even know how to build a storyboard, like how to be able to, you need to know the assets to do it. And so it can't just do it by itself. It still needs an incredible amount of human oversight to do it. But, people are doing at the Sundance Festival, people were having, AI awards for filmmakers who were generating AI videos. You should check that out. Like look up some of the filmmakers who are making AI content. It's unbelievable what they're able to do. And then this is out of ChatGPT. And I was just kind of playing around, but you can just see like these are images from when I was here last session, and it was just and so this is a still image. But as you can see, it gets rendered and now it's moving. And so I could, put the text to model it to my mouth. But as you can see, like this is where just looking at it and knowing it, like I can look at it and see that it's an AI generated photo.
Well, it's got that, so you got a still image, and then it was able to render the hands
Yeah.
after it had the reference image. But
Yeah.
so like
To generate
generating from scratch, so to speak, from text.
it struggle.
Doesn't, however it learns, it doesn't map what we recognize as a hand
Right.
into from text to image. But if you give it a reference, because it
Does
doesn't,
much better.
it's just a pixel
Right.
of data at that point.
Yes.
As a person in the creative industry, like that sucks for me. I mean, if someone was going to otherwise pay
Yeah.
a human to do that creative work, like you said, that's just a snippet, that's like a short gift. But like, if we were gonna think, hey, we're gonna bring this film festival here and all this stuff, like, if it could make a film
Yeah.
at a fraction of the cost,
Sure.
like, what's the human element of direct? How much do we gotta fill in, so-
Yeah. So I would say the filmmakers there are incredibly talented filmmakers.
Yeah.
Like they're the best anyway, right? And so even designers, like they're still going to be people who are designing can be better at designing,
Yeah.
right? Much better at designing.
Yeah.
Like now, just if you're putting together a reel or doing food photography or now to erase a tree out of an image in Photoshop, it takes some effort to just remove stuff. Not can push a button and remove it, but you still have to understand the different dimensions of design.
Exactly.
There's still like understanding color theory.
Yeah.
Like there's still these things that matter.
That's to the young man that was asking about, the younger generation coming into the workforce, like what skills, what
Yeah.
smart, as someone that's been in the industry for a while, you start to see that AI tools being integrated into the software
Yeah.
people already use. It's kind of, oh,
Yeah.
Firefox, kind of sneaky, okay. But with these other models, that stratification of price points,
Yeah.
the different levels of subscription,
Yeah.
unlocking different features.
And for sure. So the ChatGPT video model, to your point earlier, is $200 a month.
Yeah.
And so it's a significant investment to use the video models. We're talking a significant amount of computational power to create videos.
Duration of a video.
So right now, like totally rendered from scratch, I think they go up to like 1 minute. But you can add your own assets and build a video up to maybe 4 or 5 minutes. Yes.
You did your AI generation of you. You said make me vote 10 years younger.
Yeah.
You could. Yeah. So you it's not great like that. It's not great, but people you can. It's possible. And so what's possible? A lot is possible. What's actually usable and good is not so much, but it's possible for sure. And so then there's sound, right? And so now we have sound. And so these are the sound generators, right? The voice models. As you can see, ChatGPT again is in the sound and it's a whisper model. And so this is part of what I built on my computer to be able to just talk directly to my computer and then it does functions for me. This is part of the sound generators, which sound technology isn't new by all means. We have Siri, we have Alexa. Um, but the voice cloning is very, very new, I should say. And so OpenAI Whispered Suno is actually music, AI generated music. I'm going to show you guys what that looks like. Otter, you guys may be familiar. It's a note taker. If you see people in meetings and their note taker jumps into the meeting, they're using something like Otter or Read AI that is a note taker. Yeah, sure.
Firefly, then a little firefly.
Yep. Firefly is one other one. And so you pop in, it says my note taker. That's what one of these are. It's an AI voice generator or cloner. 11 Labs is actually very impressive. I would say that the voice is probably one that's very scary for people because the voice can be used for.
Let me tell you what my grandpa told me when I was just 6 years old. Son, always speak the truth. People will never forget what you say.
That's pretty impressive for an AI model, right? That's totally AI generated.
I think this is a really nice way to just talk naturally together, talk plainly. Let's give it a shot.
And so that's 11 Labs, which is good. And then also ChatGPT has a voice mode. If you guys haven't seen this. Hey, are you working?
Hey, yep, I'm here. What's up?
So I'm doing a live presentation at the Mercantile Library, and I want you to give some reassuring words about artificial intelligence to the audience.
Absolutely. Here's something you could say. AI is a powerful tool that, when used responsibly, can enhance our lives in countless ways. It's not here to replace us, but to work alongside us, augmenting our abilities and helping us solve complex problems. Embracing AI thoughtfully ensures we can unlock its full potential for the benefit of all. How does that sound?
It sounds good. Could you do a rendition in Jamaican patois?
Sure, here's a take in Jamaican patois. AI is one powerful tool, When we use it right, it can uplift we lives in enough ways. It not come fi take we place, but fi work side by side with we, help boost up we abilities and tackle big problems. So when we embrace AI carefully, we can unlock all of the good things it offers to everybody. How's that?
That's pretty good, actually. And so one of the things that I highlighted, I did a full series on just the voice and using different voices and dialects for learning and teaching, because countless studies talk about the effectiveness of learning for students in a dialect or language that's familiar to them. And so being able to teach and train people in dialects that are familiar to them is very powerful as an educational tool. And so Suno, if you guys remember, our our uh, our apology letter, right? Here we go. And so we got a song that we made for the apology letter, right? Here's my website. I'm promoting it. You guys can go check it out. It's on all streaming platforms. But if you guys want to hear it, here we go. Totally AI generated.
My love, I fumbled the cosmos of us. Fractured stardust, where constellations once danced. Regret ricochets in my red cage. Silence my penance. Forgive this chaos cold heart, still tethered to your light. If time could rewind, I'd unbreak every breath. I'm sorry, utterly, endlessly, imperfectly yours.
That's crazy, right? And so, and then there's a remix. And yeah, this is this, I don't know, man. My heart was really broken, like, and so this is the remix, which it takes some prompting to kind of play around with it.
I fumbled the cosmos of us, fractured stardust, where constellations once danced. Regret ricochets in my ribcage.
And so that's AI generated music with Suno. And so for me, it just makes me imagine what can be unlocked with your creativity at this point, right? We have an AI generated photo, we have an AI generated poem, we have an AI generated song, but I created it. And so you get into this kind of weird dynamic of creativity and who owns it, and is it really creativity? Like there's a huge debate about that.
Can't copyright.
Huh?
Can't be copyright.
Can't copyright. So could I copyright it? Like
You can't.
it's not possible with the AI.
There's been at least one federal case that says
Mm,
it's not a human creation. It's the Taylor case. It said it's not a human creation. It can't be copyrighted.
wow. I saw that. I saw actually that OpenAI is lobbying right now to remove all restrictions around copyright for them right now. Like, that's a big case that they present.
Yes. It behooves them to ingest the source material.
Yeah.
Even create it so that
Interesting.
it builds their model.
Yeah.
So it's a one-way street.
The
Wow.
superior proposition is if you violated somebody's copyright by drawing on copyrighted materials to create your AI image or text or prompt.
That's the big
Answer
question.
that.
And so they're being sued. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, everybody has pending lawsuits just for that reason to say. And part of that is because we looked at the tools like Perplexity, like search, that are drawing traffic away from the websites and stealing their creative property. Like it's really bad. So that's a big thing. And so this is RUDI from the Jetsons. And so that's all the different image generators that the ChatGPT and, or I should say, large language models do. And so a couple of things that I want to leave you guys with, just strategy, because one of the things was what do I do to prepare myself or protect myself from AI models? And so a lot of it is I put together a framework just to be able to help folks. And so you want to be able to look at just what platform is it coming from? And so there's email, phone calls, social media, and text messages. And this, I'll send this out. You guys will be able to have this, but just zoom in. Yeah. Okay. There we go. And so emails, right? Mismatch sender email, generic greetings, urgent action required, which is traditional phishing stuff. but it amplifies it when you're using large language models. Of course, phone calls, robotic, unnatural, requests for payments, gift cards, cryptos, text messages, and social media is really, just AI generated content is all over social media. There's an interesting theory called dark internet or dead internet theory, to where the internet just becomes AI slop, right? We're probably not that far away from having digital identities. People have to verify themselves digitally. That's totally Black Mirror episode, but and then how to spot AI generated text. This is just a general guideline. You mentioned a couple tools, GPT zero, content at scale, zero GPT. All of these are AI detectors, which you can try. I wouldn't say one is better than the other. They're all kind of have some flaws. But this is just a playbook for being able to understand AI generated text and content, to be able to see it. And then the same for AI generated images and videos. Again, check the hands. Always check the hands first. It's going to be the first place you start. Distorted text, blurred backgrounds, or the AI um, film, I should say. And then lastly, AI generated audio, and then also a framework for you to pause. And so many of you who are, especially those of you who are my senior, whose attention spans haven't been degraded in the way that some of us younger folks have had our attention spans degraded, you probably just want to slow down in dealing with digital content now. I don't think we live in a world now where you can just passively engage with it without asking, where did this come from? Like, who sent this? What is this about? Why am I getting this? And so there's a couple things that you can do. The pause. What platform are you on when images, audio, and videos are being presented to you? You should probably ask questions or verify the source. Someone mentioned, what if it gets the information wrong? It will sometime. And so you should probably verify, cross-reference. You can have the tools speak to each other sometime. ChatGPT says something, cross-reference it with Perplexity, just to be able to say, all right, is this real or not? And then if it's urgency, if there's high pressure, you're acting immediately, that's indicative of something being fraudulent when they're trying to speed you up. And are they asking for sensitive info? And are they trying to get an emotional appeal from you, typically through fear, excitement, these typical things inside of fraudulent behavior and activities. And so I hope that you guys aren't feeling like George Jetson right now. Questions, yes. Thank you.
Like, toolbox looks like, given some of these that can be put your system together in certain ways.
That's a good question. And so my personal toolbox for me, I work in product development, and so I do a lot of product design. So I use ChatGPT 1 always because it's the best mobile experience of any of the bots. Because I can talk directly to it, I can use it at any time I want. So if I'm taking a walk or if I'm in the car or just whatever, I got a thought. And so I use that one as a way for just brainstorming and general information management. I use Claude, the other text generator, because it has the ability to render diagrams in the chatbot. And so if you're a person who creates memos or you have to use build stuff in Canva or let me show you something that I'm talking about. And so for me, just so you can get a good idea of what I mean by this. And so Claude, because build an SVG diagram of responsible AI. And so Claude's one of the few bots that can render it right in the browser like this, like how it's doing this and building it right on spot. Excuse me. And then it's going to show us what that looks like. This is one of the chatbots that can do that. And it's a general purpose chatbot. And so I use this one when I'm doing like wireframes, prototyping, things like this. And it's also the best in terms of writing.
render SVG.
Boom. Yeah,
Okay, so it's like taking the it's mapping the vector.
exactly.
Okay.
Yep. SVG, HTML. It does it right in browser.
Could it render the HTML?
Yep. JavaScript. Like it keeps going.
I mean, I know Copilot is
Yeah.
integrated into Visual Studio now,
Yeah.
where you can get, but again, you have to like subscribe to like GitHub to get that feature. So that like comes back to what we were talking about earlier, this tier pricing. Like, okay,
Yeah.
who gets what based on what you want to pay for feature wise, all that.
And so ChatGPT, Claude, for sure. I think those two, without question, you probably can get a lot accomplished with just those two. And so this is Mermaid, a mermaid diagram. So if you're in project management, if you're in task management, if you need to do process management, you can create diagrams that map out processes for you, and it'll create the entire diagram to be able to do that for you. So Claude is actually fantastic. To me, out of all the, it used to be Claude, now it's Google AI Studio. So I got a lot of tools. So I'm probably, but for most people, ChatGPT does everything, right? As a general purpose bot. Like it can do all that you needed to do. Okay.
Where it's actually suddenly and other people are using it, but then you give them applications. And how do you stop it?
It's funny because though I follow the I think he's a Wharton professor at the Wharton College of Business, and they had put out a statement that if anybody caught using ChatGPT on their admission application would be completely excluded immediately. And so there's going to be a war in higher ed on this tool, because there's resistance from teachers, from professors. Mostly people 55 and over are not, adoption is very, very slow. And people in the academy are looking at ChatGPT as theft, a tool that is just for cheating. And students, of course, are not, they are using it. And so that's part of the discussion right now. What does it look like from a policy standpoint? There aren't any answers yet because it's so new. It's only been on the market since 2022. And so adoption is only starting to pick up this year. And so there isn't a tried and true answer to what's appropriate, And I'm of the opinion that teachers should learn how to use it to then push students, to understand how students are using it. You can't really, I think, profess or even really get into the pedagogy unless you understand the tool and its use cases and how it works to then be able to legislate how students should use it. And so I don't know the answer yet. I'm part of this think tanks that I hope I'm gonna get invited to.
Yeah, and the follow-up is like, with so many people that say apply to colleges, there's no way one individual can read all those applications.
Sure.
There's some kind of AI generated thing that's searching for keywords and all that, just to make sure you get sifted through. And then to combat that, or to make yourself more competitive, could you use an AI tool to make sure those words are included in your application?
You could. And so I think Cal Berkeley, there's another school, I don't know if it was Pepperdine, one school is totally implementing Claude, this platform here, because they have a constitutional AI system. And Claude also helped build, I think, I forget, in the EU where they were digitizing the entire constitution of some sort, and they were allowing people to query the constitution. But yes, you can do that with HR systems, with employment, with resumes. That technology is already there. People are using AI to build their resume with the job description, right? So let's say you put the job description in Claude, and then you put your resume in Claude and say, optimize my resume for this job. People are definitely doing that now. And so a war is taking place between, workers and AI, or managers and AI, students and teachers. But all of this stuff is we're going to have to sort out. There isn't clear answers in terms of what's considered ethical and what isn't ethical, right? That's the work that has to be done in defining responsible use of artificial intelligence or responsible use of digital intelligence.
So did you use AI to put reasoning?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So part of me, as you can see, my computer, like this is how I use AI. Like I think that the best case in using it is talking, is natural language. We as human beings, our first way that we communicated was through oral tradition, through speaking. And we can speak, if you're me, I can speak probably 180 words per minute. But you're typing, you type at maybe 40, 50 words per minute. And so just the stream of information that you can get out by talking versus by typing is drastically inefficient, I would say, from typing. And so just from talking, my thoughts, I tell the AI what I want it to do, and then it generates it, right? And so I can talk about a framework. I can say, hey, when I'm developing a framework, I say all the information that I want it to do, and then it gives me an answer. I don't like that answer. No, you're missing this point. No, you're not doing this right. No, change this. And so this is the real power of it. And so part of that is getting comfortable with the tool, because Microsoft and I think the Carnegie Institute did a study and said that the more confident you are in yourself, the less likely you are to depend on the AI output in its original state. The more less confident you are in yourself, the more likely you are to depend on the AI's final output. And so that right there, just having more self-efficacy, being able to try to increase literacy, like these things are going to be very, very, very important things that we discuss when we talk about how we use these tools. And so then it's going to stop recording me. I'm really happy with this tool. I built this tool. Like this is a tool I made, right? Like I'm just so excited about that. And then so you put this on here and evaluate this speaker's take, you know, like you and so, right, the speaker provides an interesting perspective on AI. So and then it gives you a response, right? It says voices versus typing. And so you could have like this is where you have like just, you know, metacognition, right? You start thinking about your thoughts, right? And like, so I think this is real opportunity to interrogate and investigate what you know, how you know, why you know, not necessarily getting the answers from the AI, but getting more questions. That's very philosophical, I know, but sure, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know you had the mic. You got it.
Well, I'm thinking, we were at the meeting, and I want to put the meeting house turn in. And I'm not doing that in you there, so it's been like super and to how hard it is to detect when actually one of the things that you know, checking where your voice and you know, speak like you and you know, so some of the things I'm this way, give it a check and then I'll rewrite ChatGPT this way, and I say ChatGPT, please learn from my revisions.
Sure.
How next this is, you know, my so you're automated to context.
Yeah.
You know, my stuff. Are there any other journals related to tools like that?
Yeah. Yeah. So in ChatGPT, actually, you can go a step further inside of ChatGPT. Not there. If you go into the settings and you go into personalize and you go custom instructions, you can actually, have you done this? Okay, so you did that for it. So for everyone else, you can go in custom instructions and give instructions on how ChatGPT should talk with you. The other part is, do you use projects?
Yeah.
So projects. And so if you create a project in ChatGPT, you can create like different windows that communicate differently. So this is a project dedicated to the Mercantile Library. And so everything in this project is related to what I was doing for this presentation. And so the voice can be here, the artifacts can be here, the files can be here. I can give custom instructions here. And so this is a way to be able to do different, how you can bifurcate or trifurcate some of your research to say, I want to put a research and I want it to talk here and I want it to talk in this way. And then I want to put in all of these files to be able to communicate in this way. but there's one even better than that. And just because we're showing tools, it's called Google LM Studio, Google Notebook LM. Are you familiar with this? All right. So Google Notebook LM is probably the best tool for research and study. And so I'm going to just give you an overview, a quick try notebook. So this is my notebook LM. This is AI grant making. And so I was reviewing a grant for artificial intelligence. And so what Google LM Studio allows you to do, it allows you to take all your sources. You can put your writing in there, all your writings, and then you can have a chat conversation with it. It's going to reference it. It's going to cite what you said, and then you can cross-reference it to other scholars or other people. And then you can kind of work in here to build your thesis or build your research. And so what AI tools really allow you to do is to become an architect of the information, right? And so that's the real disruption, because I would argue that writing within itself is a tool. And so some people might debate me on like writing being, but writing is a form of communication. And so if I don't write it, but I thought it, is the thought mine, right? Is the original thought, like who owns the thought? Kind of to your point about the copyright. The intellectual property becomes whose if I give the thought, but the machine wrote for me. Like that's a really, people debate about this all the time, right? But this is one. And then you can generate, a podcast off of your paper. Right. So it'll probably, we'll come back to it, but it, yeah, I know, right? I hope it loads. If you guys have a moment, we'll let it load and you can hear it. But basically, if you have a research or any research, or if you have a contract or any information, you can put it in here, and then Google LM Studio. You can generate study guides, briefing documents, frequently asked questions. You can tell me more about the grant. And so that's all the grant and source information in there that I put. It tells me about the grant, and then it sources the information. Where's it at? And so imagine if you're trying to do, I don't know, all the books in here, and normally if you're doing research, you would go to the library, you would check out all your books, you would go home, you would highlight everything in it. Well, now I put it in Google LM and I prompted and asked, like, does this book talk about alternative forms of pedagogy? And it'll say, like, yes, this book talks about alternative form of pedagogy here, right on page 7, and it highlights it. Um, and so Google LM, like for educators, researchers, this right here is a tool that supercharges you in terms of what your research is.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I want you guys to hear the podcast. It's really cool how it 2 AI models have a podcast about your information. It's unbelievable. It takes a while though, because it's maybe a 15, 16-minute podcast. But anyway, you're patiently waiting for your question.
So I think it's really interesting that the lawyers
Right.
so like it's like it feels like this
Yeah.
I think there's still potential future big tech is the one that's like it's supposed to be use of
Yeah, and that's one of the scary things that's probably the real scary thing is what happens when we digitize all the information and it goes into a walled garden or behind a paywall. Like information is now behind a paywall and now it's not accessible. Our libraries become repositories for Google. That's very scary. So for the little guys, unless it becomes open source, everything becomes open source and we can start building our own models, which I don't know if you guys have heard about DeepSeek, the Chinese AI company who reverse engineered ChatGPT and then put out an open source model. Like this is what OpenAI was really born out of, and capitalism, it changes it, it becomes a race for that and a race to the bottom in some cases. And so I don't know. It's a great question, man. Like, how do the little guys keep up? I'm trying my best to learn about how to do it, and then build my own software products. That's probably the biggest thing is you can build your own software products. You can build your own suite of tools. I was paying $20 a month for a tool to the tool that I built. You know, I built it myself. I asked the AI models to help me walk through it. And now I don't have to pay $20 a month anymore on a tool. And so you might see this just democratizing just different tools. You know, I saw someone building a DocuSign remake. You know, I rebuilt Claude. You know, so you might have this where we get very competitive on like crude applications, things like that. But it costs an incredible amount of money to train the models. And so unless we have infrastructure, how we talked about, you need data, you need architecture, and then you need the parameters. It's you know upwards 5 million, $10 million to train models, and so that you know that rules a lot of us out. You know, definitely rules me out. But you know that's a good question, and I think part of it is learning and knowing how they work is one of the ways. You know, is one of the ways we can at least fight back is being educated in what they do, what they're capable of, and so we're not taken by storm. We're not surprised by it. Yes,
Sort of off the back of this gentleman's question.
sure.
It feels like the various AI companies and tools are at this like really pivotal moment where they're trying to figure out their business model. And
Yeah.
that's we're seeing like ChatGPT come out with a $200 a month level subscription.
Yep.
But we're also seeing like compute costs come down and DeepSeek enter, and you know that's changing things with chips and everything.
Mhm.
But do you think we're gonna like not even the little guys, do you think we're going to see a bloodbath of the big guys over the next few years as they sort of run out of runway before are they going to figure out the compute equation before they meet, you know?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So they're gonna, I called it, you know, I was watching Oppenheimer, and I think that we're kind of in that territory where, you know, everybody's trying to figure out how to split the atom. You know, how do we do it? How do we increase compute? And one of the arguments is that the current architecture, the transformer architecture, is going to reach a threshold to where it only can go so far. Context windows can only go so far. You can only build on top of so much, and then we just plateau. And so some people believe that we're never going to reach, it's called artificial general intelligence, where these bots can operate autonomously. They become sentient, all these crazy words they throw out there, which I'm not frankly a believer, but the tools as they are now are really, really powerful. But we will see, you know, the arms race between Google, OpenAI, and Claude. You know, it's already happening. And so I guess the only thing we really can hope for is that they don't create like a planetary crisis and being able to just drain all the water and all the electricity. We're going to need new ways to be able to supercharge. They're looking at nuclear energy now. That's scary. And so yes, they're gonna fight each other, and you know, hopefully we don't. I don't know. I don't have the answer to like what it is. It's one of those things where the last session, I said we look back on um, cell phones, and we probably regret giving cell phones to our children now, having smartphones, allowing them access to social media at such a young age because of what it's done. And hindsight is very valuable. And so right now we don't know what the net effects of large languages are going to be, large language models are going to be. And so part of that is just learning and having people where I believe like, man, like we should be using it for as much good as we possibly can. They should be open source. We should know how they work. Like everybody should have access to the technology. I think it's going to be a new functional literacy. I would say we're going to have to figure out universal basic income. Like these are very real problems that we're going to have to talk about, that the only way we have that conversation is if we understand like how they work, what they're doing. And so you're asking great questions. Like I think that continue to ask those, and you know, ask those in circles where, you know, at the tech weeks, and start putting that out there for people to be able to investigate. You know, that's would be my recommendation.
So I think we could share cohort to be some AI software called HEDS, which is for statistical analysis.
Okay.
You know, is used programming languages. So you have to enter the commands with the software gives you. With HEDS, you go data say in plain language.
Yeah.
What you want, what directions of the analysis you want software to run.
Yep.
It does it for you, that's having to know like all the different commands that you look for programming languages. And I was very happy to learn because I know programming languages a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember in so I'm very happy that this software exists.
Yeah. It's a renaissance. I think that there's I mean it's a tool, and so as it it's kind of like the argument when people say like you know, guns aren't bad. You know, people using guns are bad, right? Like guns by itself. Like we're gonna step into this argument with artificial intelligence tools, where people are gonna say, "Good, the AI tool isn't bad. It's the people using the tool that's bad." And so we're stepping into a really philosophical, esoteric, political, socio-political thing with AI. I mean, people are already protesting. You know, they sat outside of OpenAI in San Francisco's office. Uh, what's it called? Handcuffed themselves to the front. You know, people are very afraid of these tools, and the big media hasn't done a good job. Big tech hasn't done a good job at explaining how the tools work, what they're going to be used for. You know, it's just automation, 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 and you know that's not good either. Oh, here's the podcast.
AI, it's well, it's everywhere these days. You know what I mean? It feels like every time you turn around, there's another headline, another breakthrough. It can be kind of hard to keep up with it all, you know?
It really is. And if you're trying to follow how it's all impacting, like the social sector, education, the places that really affect people's lives, well, that adds another whole layer to it.
Exactly. And that's actually what we're going to really dig into today. We're looking at two reports that came out in March of this year, 2025. They're called Funding the Future, Grant Maker Strategies in AI Investment, that's the main one. And then there's this AI grant making rubric that goes along with it.
Yeah, they kind of go hand in hand.
Right. So basically we're going to, we're trying to give you a shortcut here. We're going to break down these reports so you can get a handle on how philanthropic organizations are approaching AI, at least when it comes to funding, you know, in education and social good kind of stuff.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
We're going to distill all the important stuff, all the trends, the things people are worried about, the things they're excited about, the stuff you really need to know to understand what's going on with AI grant making.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah, it is. If that's your first time experience, that's unbelievable. So that's all the source documents that I put in here that it's referencing. And so it's 26 minutes. And so they're going to go through and talk about all the source information. And so it's wonderful for being able to listen in your car. Like if you need to get up to speed on docs, listen to the podcast and you know, you can get up to speed on that. Yes, thank you all so much.